Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello.
Today we are going to be doing a deck profile, but in a slightly different way. I actually built physical decks, and I played physical games, card game with my friend Pep. And yeah, I have that video. It's either already out or it's coming out. I don't know what order I'm going to post these in yet, but yeah. So this is going to be a deck profile for a deck that I think has potential. The video that I play the deck in is not the best set of games, unfortunately, but I still think it's an interesting deck if you're looking for something different to try out. And I think particularly in this meta with like Pikarom and Dragapult and other things, I think it has potential, that's for sure. So definitely give this deck a look. I'll let you see what this is. This is give you a little... It's a Torkoal V deck profile. So if you don't know Torkoal V, basically it's like a fire Pokemon that also has control abilities because it gets rid of energy. I'll talk about that more as I go through it, but check out the video with myself and Pep if you haven't seen it. And without further ado, we'll just get into the full profile, shall we? All right. So getting into the deck profile, we have three of these Torkoal Vs. Now, let me move this. The hair glare there. Oh gosh, that's not any better. I'm gonna put that there for now and then we'll move it. We have three Torkoal V. Now, if you don't know, Torkoal V has two attacks. Its first attack does 90 damage for 3 energy, 2 fire and a colorless. And you discard the top card of your deck. And if that card was a fire energy, it does 90 more. So there are some decks I was toying with that plays a Rangaroo. This deck does not play any Pokemon with abilities though. But you could pair this with a version that plays a Rangaroo and abilities to guarantee that 180 by putting a fire on top of your deck. But the main attack for this one is its second attack, Steaming Crush, which does 120 for 3 fire and a colorless, which is a lot of energy. That's the main problem with this Pokemon, to be honest. But you discard 2 energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So you're doing okay damage at 120 and discarding 2 energy, which is a lot. So the reason I wanted to think about building a deck like this is because with Dragapult, even if they have Malamar sometimes, if you discard 2 energy from them, they have to have an energy in hand and use the Malamar and do a switch and all that. Some decks don't even play Malamar, so you discard 2 energy and they're just stuck. Pikarom is another good example of this. If you discard 2 energy from them and they can't take a KO the next turn, you can discard 2 more energy on the following turn. So it really adds up for a deck that powers itself up very quickly, but maybe doesn't have the ability to power itself up later in the game. So specifically against Dragapult and Pikarom. Now, with Spiritomb Beasts and some other decks out there right now, this maybe is not as good. Obviously, with things that run Frostmoth or maybe Welder decks even, this may not be great. This does knock out a baby Blacephalon, but I don't think Blacephalon really cares about you discarding energy. So definitely some challenges with this deck in the meta, but I do think it has some favorable matchups as well. That's why I wanted to build around this Torkoal. So we have 3 Torkoal Vs. I don't think you need more than 3 in this deck because also you're not going to be powering up that many of them. There we go. 3 Torkoal Vs. Now, as you already saw when I set the rest of the cards down, we have 4 Volcanion here. We have 4 Volcanion to help power everything up without the need for Welder necessarily. Its first attack, Flare Starter, allows you to attach 3 energies. If you're going for second on your first turn, you can attach 3 energies to any of your Pokemon in any way you like. 3 fire energies for 1 fire. So our goal is to always lead off with that going second. And then its second attack, if you have 4 energy on the board, does 110. Without a Metal Frying Pan, that one hits a Zacian. So also a good option out there for all the combo Zacians that you might be seeing now. But yeah, 4 Volcanions because we really want to start with it. Then we have 1 Victini V, which helps us to get energy back on the board with Spreading Flames, and it's just an alternate attacker for 2 energy. And 1 Ninetales V. Ninetales V specifically for its first attack, which lets you copy the attack of whatever your opponent is for 3 energy. So again, another 3 energy attacker that can do a lot of damage depending on the opponent. So you can Welder attach and get it powered up. That's the main problem with Torkoal is it's 4 energy, so Welder attach power up doesn't always work. And then we have a Blacephalon GX. I don't know if this is needed, but Bursting Burn is useful for things like Obstagoon, if you're thinking of you're facing that maybe. Burst GX is also good depending on the deck you're playing against, because we don't really have another GX attack we want to use, so that might come in handy. And then we're going to have 1 Turtonator. If you find yourself able to hold your opponent off for a few turns before they can knock out a Torkoal, and then they get some other really big Pokemon up in the active, you could use Turtonator to blow it up and take a bunch of prizes all at once. And then finally, we have 1 Victini Prism Star. Just a really good card for recovering some energy into your deck. That could also set up Torkoal's first attack later on if most of your deck is energy. But yeah, 1 Victini Prism Star as well for another single prize attacker, 2 energy. So those are the attackers in this deck. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, changes, etc. But this is a good starting point if Torkoal is a deck that maybe you've had in the back of your mind. So in terms of the engine this is running, this is the biggest thing I've gone back and forth on. So what I'm focusing on today is a greens Torkoal deck. I don't know if this is the right way to do it though. So we have 4 greens exploration, which lets you get 2 trainer cards from your deck, as long as you don't have any Pokemon with abilities, which we don't have any Pokemon with abilities. The challenge that I have with greens in any deck right now is Marnie. Marnie makes it so hard to combo things with green turn after turn. Whether you green for one thing and then a green for something in a Welder. When I was in the games that I was playing against my friend, he had Marnies in both of his decks. So unfortunately, it was really tough for this deck. So as long as Marnie stays a very relevant part of the meta, I think Green's decks are always going to suffer. So that's just something I would keep in mind. I decided to try this engine out because it is a control style deck. So Greens just seems like the right card, but maybe a 4 line of research would be better, or maybe 4 Marnie yourself. Hard to say. But for now, this is an option that I wanted to explore. Definitely open to interpretation. Then we have 4 Welders. Obviously, you're running a fire deck. You're going to run 4 Welders. And then the last 2 cards we have here are 2 Boss's Order. Wish I could have the second full art Boss's Order. I have not pulled it yet, so we have to live with a 1. This is like, if you are all into like OCD, like getting all that stuff, that's going to really annoy you. I'm sorry. But 2 Boss's Order, because pulling things into the active that don't have any energy on and you're constantly taking energy off could be really annoying. Also just taking KOs on certain things. So 2 Boss's Orders feels about right. So those are our supporters. And now we are going to get into some of the item cards. We have 4 Quick Balls. Pretty straightforward, right? 4 Quick Balls. We also have 4 Pokegears because, yes, we are a Greens engine. Greens engines typically like to run Pokegears, so you can find Greens or Welder, etc. As you can see, this deck does not have a ton of draw power. That is the one thing that really hurts this deck in the long run. And if you are interested in this deck, I would explore things like Acrobike or other draw power options, maybe like a couple of research in here even. Yeah, that's just something that I would consider. But we have 4 Pokegears, and then we got 4 Crushing Hammers, because taking 2 energy off of your opponent with your attack is not enough. Sometimes you got to get more energy off of the bench. So 4 Crushing Hammers. You just got to do it. I don't actually own a wait and see hammer. That would probably be something I would put into this, but for the purpose of this profile, there is no wait and see hammer. It's up to you if you think that is useful with greens. I actually found myself having to greens for other pieces on turn 1 than I needed, meaning like I couldn't have greens for a wait and see hammer if I wanted to because I needed other pieces. So that's just something to consider as well. Then we have 4 switches. Because Torkoal has 4 retreat cost, which is quite a lot. So you really want to be able to switch in and out of things. If you start with a Torkoal or any of these Pokemon and you want to get into Volcanion turn 1, got to have switch. We have 2 Fire Crystals. Now that might seem weird in a deck that runs Victini V and Victini Prism. The main reason there is, with Quick Balls, throwing things away, I found myself in lots of instances wanting to find energy, and I just didn't have enough in hand to welder or do what I needed. So threw a couple of crystals in. You could maybe consider getting something else in there, but just that's a couple of open slots, I would say, more than anything. We got 2 reset stamps. Reset stamp is a great card in the meta right now. Comboing that with things like power plant in a greens deck makes a ton of sense. So 2 reset stamps feels pretty good. And then this is an interesting one. We have 2 buff padding. Buff padding for Torkoal V makes its HP 260, which is relevant in a lot of different matchups. 260 means that a Reshazard can't knock you out. It means that a Zacian that isn't in ADP cannot knock you out. So Zacian with ADP one-shots everything in this deck. Nothing you can do about that. But Zacian in a combo Zacian deck is 30 damage short. So buff padding is pretty good for a number of scenarios. Actually, we played some Inteleon V against this, not in the matchup that you see, but buff padding allowed it to take a 60, which is 120 with weakness, twice before getting knocked out. So it goes to 240, and then he needs to hit it again. So buff padding came into a lot of use there. Now for the stadiums, we have 2 power plants because power plant super strong in this deck. Stamp plant, massively good combo. Then we got 1 giant hearth to find our energy out of deck. As you can see, we don't have energy spinners or flints in here. And then we have 1 heat factory. That is like the saving grace draw thing in this deck. Like I said, I would try to find room for acrobikes somewhere in here if I were you at home making this deck. But those are our stadium line. Now, that's all the cards except for energy. And for energy, I believe we have 12 fire energy. Let me just count it out here. We have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, and 12. Yep. 12 fire energy there. It's, feels about right. I don't think you need tons and tons of energy in this deck between your crystals and your hearths. It's enough to do some decent damage to find your energy somewhat reliably. That is the deck profile. Let me know what you think. This is an experiment. It's probably not a tier... No, I know it's not a tier 1 deck. It is a deck that is really meant for a meta where there is not a lot of energy acceleration from the best decks. So if you want to try something else out, just online for the Players' Cup, or just, for fun, because you're a little bit bored of Pikarom or Dragapult, right? This is, I think, is a really fun deck to play around with. Frustrating at times, and definitely things you should play with. But anyways, let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Check out the battle video, which either is or isn't out right now or comes out the next day. Very soon within the time frame that this video comes out. But check that out, and I will see you all in a future video. Carpe awesome.